think we had talked about this beforehand, about how sometimes bridge feels like it's the consolation prize. It's what you do if you can't do wheel. And when you really look at it, there's so much fruit, there's so much benefit to doing this pose. And I think there's so much benefit to doing smaller poses, slower. That's where you receive so much of the benefits that the pose has to offer. Often when we go too fast or go too far, we bypass the benefit and we start coming into a different experience, maybe finding where our edge is. But that can be not as nourishing for our system as finding where the system actually is capable of being.
So if you jump into wheel, you're just Lance Armstronging.
Yeah.
Your yoga pose where, again, because of the limitations, all of it's in your low back, and then you just knock out the shoulders, you hyperextend the shoulders, and you've done the pose. But done well, complex poses are just basic concepts stacked one on the other. Complex poses aren't a whole different animal in and of themselves. They're just building blocks of these other poses. And there's ways to make bridge pose hard and challenging and very therapeutic.
We're even talking about the therapeutics, and everyone should be able to do back bends. And it's interesting because I find that group classes are predisposed to people with a lot of mobility. Private sessions, private therapeutic sessions are predisposed to people who are struggling with mobility.
Or they're so hypermobile that every time
everything hurts.
If they go to a yoga class, they're always walking away mildly injured.
Yeah. And so I think if you've got someone who's really tight, you can do this in a supported manner, and you can do it with a blanket that's folded gently and just prop them so that their front body can relax.
And how do you know if your client's really stiff? Look at their downward dog, look at their Setu Bandhasana. Have them lie down, bring one leg up. You're going to get a real quick sense as to how much stiffness there is in their muscles. Put them in a reclining twist. Tip their knees from side to side in a windshield wiper. You're going to see a lot of restriction. So those kind of clients, it's a lot safer to get into a restorative shape, use your breath, melt, relax, allow, surrender, all of those kinds of words. Mm-hmm. And then same thing, if you get a really flexible student, look at their downward dog, you're going to see those legs locked straight. Look at their Setu Bandhasana, their leg is way past vertical, moving towards their head. Look at their reclining twist, their knees are touching the floor.
Yeah.
And that's the person where, even though they feel stiff and they will report feeling uncomfortably stiff, putting them in a restorative pose and asking them to melt, surrender, and let go is going to leave them even more unstable.
Yeah. When you have a lot of mobility, it's fascinating because what happens is the ligaments are not quite as
collagenous.
Yeah. They don't support the joints as much as they do in others who don't have that hypermobility. And what happens is the tissue then has to do like extra duty. So the tissue's working hard and it's tight and it feels like it needs to stretch, and the ligaments let you stretch beyond what's safe for your joint.
So then the muscles have to contract even more and even spasm to try to hold something in place. They try to shut down movement. And so they'll say, I can't move my arm past a certain point. And if the body does that as a protective mechanism, the body wants to preserve that joint integrity. One of the fascinating things that I've been learning about in terms of looking at movement systems is even the person who can be very stiff, it's always a relative stiffness. So because they're very stiff and their hamstrings, when a stiff person does that forward fold, they're relatively too flexible in their lumbar spine. So their lumbar spine goes into too much spinal flexion. That person with really short hamstrings that won't yield, they do a forward fold by overly rounding their lumbar spine. So the problem is always going to be the relative flexibility that we're trying to limit. So even in a yoga class, we're always trying to slow down the part that moves too fast, and we're trying to speed up the part that moves too slow. Or you could say we're trying to stiffen and slow the flexible part, and we're trying to lengthen and loosen the stiff part.
So my daughter is a therapist in family systems.
Cool.
Thinking of the difference between I'm coming in here because my mom's horrible, or I'm coming in here and realizing how the whole system works and what my part is, and understanding that everything's involved, right? Everything has a part to play, and which is great because that means there's ways to get more ease and stability in the practice can come from a variety of different sources. It doesn't have to just come from the primary place we're paying attention to.
And so it's, instead of bemoaning your short hamstrings, how do we actually shorten the low back tissue? How do we actually shore up and give boundaries to where you're leaking somewhere else?
Yeah.
To allow the body, the nervous system, because everyone's like, that's the nervous system, it's not about muscles. We can understand how the nervous system is being protective, but you still then have to address muscle length and relative flexibility. And you can do that in a group class. This push-pull through your feet gives you a good way into just simple pull back through your feet, lift up into the pose. How does it feel? Come down.
Yeah.
Push forward through your feet, lift up into the pose. Does it feel better, worse, or the same? If they both feel great, wonderful.
Yeah.
But if one feels terrible and the other one feels great, now you have a new way of making the pose feel better for you.
Yeah.
But that does remind me now of the Baddhakonasana Bridge, which is a lovely bridge, and it really helps people work on that pelvic stability. If you start on the ground, lying down on the ground with the soles of the feet together, the knees open up out to the sides, and then you adjust the feet. You still push-pull with the feet in Baddhakonasana, adjust that pelvic tilt, pubic bone, hip points level, and then as you lift into the bridge slowly by pushing into the outer edges of the feet, you're going to get some teeter-tottering side to side. And this really helps people lift with the exhale, as Jane was suggesting. So you really start to stabilize through the core.
Yeah, and that's a really good way to see what part of the body is drafting.
Yeah.
And what part of the body is taking the lead.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's cool. Yeah, I like that. So that's some good therapeutic applications. When you think of going into the pose more assertively, like more expansively, grabbing your ankles.
Yeah, Chatush Padasana. Yeah, Chatush Padasana. Yeah, grabbing the ankles. Certainly you would have to have almost maximal hip extension, almost maximal thoracic and lumbar extension in order to then comfortably shorten the pose even more. Like your students, I was always trying to move my feet closer. That's more advanced.
Yeah.
That's when the more you narrow your base, the higher the apex has to be. Yeah, looking at that apex in your more advanced students, certainly in wheel, but then in a more deep bridge, you can see what is the highest point. Where's the apex? Where are they getting the most flexibility in their spine? And if we reduce that, can we distribute that back bend so it's a little bit more of a gradual curve and not like a triangle,
right.
Like an alarming sort of one vertebra is maximally extended while the rest are just sloping away.
Yeah, you want the increased height to be shared among the whole spine. And then we hadn't talked about this in just the arms, but I think an advanced arm is the interweave underneath, where you interweave your hands and then the heads of the shoulders roll back. And the reason it's advanced is because most people, just to get into that pose, the shoulder heads come out of the posture we want them in. They come forward, and then often they stay in that forward position in order to get the clasp, the bind. And do that if you can sustain the opening of the collarbones and the broadening of the shoulders, and that's advanced.
And that upper arm rolling out is a common cue in the alignment world or in the Iyengar world where it originated. It's going to do that in our shoulder flexion poses and our shoulder extension poses. We love that external rotation of the upper arm bone. And if you're very broad-shouldered, then interlacing the hands underneath gets a little bit trickier. So you use a strap.
Yeah.
And if you have a shoulder injury, 1000% you're using a strap instead of that, because you can get the benefit of bursting that strap, pulling the strap apart to activate the muscles that help assist that external rotation just as well as interlacing your hands underneath you.
And I would say the benefit of using a strap too is that it's symmetrical, and interlacing the hands has asymmetry built into it. It's just a cleaner way to move into that.
And I like, as a teacher, just universalizing the use of the strap. So again, it's not that consolation prize. Like, if you can't do this, grab a strap. And then they're standing up from the mat, trudging over to the prop wall and grabbing
the cone of shame.
The cone of shame, exactly. It's everybody grab your strap. And then just keep walking your hands inwards. And if it gets to a point where you feel that upper inner arm rolling in, stop there. Back up, burst out. And you say, like, eventually, interlace your hands.
And then notice what is compromised when you do that.
Because you can certainly hyperextend your elbows mightily. I would say whenever you're doing anything with narrow hands, anytime I'm working with a straight arm, I'm telling people to isometrically bend those elbows. You're trying to keep that bicep active. It helps to center the head of the arm bone in the joint. and it just keeps you from hyperextending in the elbow in order to achieve the shape of the interlaced hands.
Yeah. Cool. So do you got any other advanced?
Well, I think the one-legged bridge is essential for stairs, for walking, for running.
It's super therapeutic.
Yeah.
And it has a lot for the ego. So I'm going to say it's therapeutic, but people who are good also really appreciate the challenge.
I think if you're fairly mobile, people are like, why are they talking about all this pain in bridge? Bridge is nothing. Okay, great. I'm glad bridge is nothing for you. Now, put a block across your pelvis, keep it level as you lift one foot off the floor.
Yeah.
And those very mobile people, that pelvis is going to twist with the lumbar spine to lift this leg versus the stationary foot on the floor can support me. And we want to strengthen those hip extensors because that's very weak, especially in walking and running.
Yeah, that's a really good way. And the block is so fun because it's just this truth teller.
Yeah, and you can, to even more, then you can straighten the leg. So one foot on the floor, the other leg is straight up in the air, put a block on top of it, dorsiflex the ankle.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, then you're lifting and lowering.
Oh,
so then once that's easy, now you're still all that weight on that one leg, lower halfway down, lift up. You could pulse at the top, all the while keeping that block level if it's on your pelvis or on the raised foot. The other version I like is the slide. So you put a blanket under one foot, bridge up, slide one foot out. All the work is in the stationary leg, and your work is primarily to ground that heel into the floor, feel the glutes engage, the heels connect to the glutes, and keep the pelvis level as you slide the leg out. A little bit of a psoas release. It gets you closer to these Setu Bandhasana restorative versions with the legs straighter, the feet against the wall, the Baddhakonasana, more advanced poses. Because fine, you can extend your hips, but your knees are bent. What happens if you try to extend a leg? Can your psoas still release, or does it all just go into the low back?
Yeah, that's so fun. I just feel like I'm listening to those going, I want to try that, but it's going to be really hard. It's going to be really hard.
I love those bridge slides. Nice and slow. The slower you go, the more you're challenging your core, and the better quality the movement will be.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. You can do the pose with both feet on a blanket, and in other fitness pursuits, people use those sliders, which are so great. They're not expensive things. So that way you learn, I'm just pushing into my feet. I was amazed at having someone just feel like they couldn't even lift into the pose because unconsciously they had been shoving their feet forward to lift into the pose. They didn't know how to lift the pelvis straight up and use their upper back also.
Yeah, that makes so much sense.
So you can use that blanket in a yoga class.
Yeah, and you can get the sliders, but you can also use a washcloth or a dish towel. Make sure they're the same though. And then if you're on a floor, just move with the grain of the wood, because going across wood's just not as, it's a pain in the ass.
And when people struggle with using blanket slides in various poses, very quickly they suss that out. They're like, it's the grain of the wood. Okay.
It's the direction of the planks, not the grain of the wood, the direction of the planks.
Okay.
I'm sticking with it.
No, it's for sure a thing. I think it's 5% of it.
It's the important 5%.
5% makes a difference.
Nothing to do with me. There's a lot of information that tells you not to move the cervical spine and bridge. I don't really see the reason to move it, so I don't think it's the end of the world, but just don't do it because your neck is flexed, right?
Some people feel like the restorative aspect of bridge is that while you're doing something very rajasic, very energizing, puffing the chest and going for all this thoracic extension, you're pushing your pelvis into extension, and then you have this restorative quality of this relatively straighter cervical spine relative to the extension. So the whole spine is still off the floor. The shoulders are down. I think this is really important. When you tell people they have to have their spine off the floor, they lift their shoulders and push down into their head. So I'm always like, keep your shoulders down.
Yeah, yeah.
Do not push into your head. I think you want your head relaxed. If we were to turn the head slightly from C1 and C2, those vertebrae that are very close to the base of the skull, I think that would be reasonably safe. What's the reason? You're not working on cervical rotation in this pose. If you tend to twist your neck by using the lower neck muscles primarily, turning the whole neck versus just getting that bobblehead action at the top, I think, you could strain your neck.
You just gave me a reason why you would do it. Because I know a lot of people have a bias in which way their head turns, which is adjusting for some other imbalance. And so if you were to have them just find neutral, just like we do with a little cat-cow, you just take that bobblehead thing, go back and forth, see if you can find neutral and stay there. And it might feel really uncomfortable if you're someone who doesn't normally hold their head in a neutral position.
Just like these micro movements are certainly reasonable. So that would get us into how do we get sufficient thoracic extension here, because it can be so limited if folks are fairly structurally kyphotic in the upper back. And then you're like, oh, this pose is good to reduce kyphosis. Only if you actually reduce the kyphosis. We're trying to get the mid to upper back muscles to engage, to press the chest forward and to lift the sternum. So again, you're going to work on that in other poses, just other shapes. They're not necessarily simpler, but they're just not bearing weight. They're not fighting gravity, because if you're in bridge, you're lifting versus gravity, where you might be able to find that thoracic extension in Cobra first, or Locust, to engage those muscles and feel how the shoulder girdle can move back relative to the rib cage.
Yeah.
You could do it in standing poses, holding the strap behind you. So again, you're doubly working on the shoulder and working on chest pressing forward.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can elevate the floor with blankets. Because bridge is a basis for shoulder stand, you would hopefully be using those blankets anyway. 1 minimum.
Yeah.
And then 2, great. And then 3, if they're very kyphotic, another blanket under the head. Nobody has this many blankets.
Yeah.
And then once they're lift into bridge, take the blanket out from behind the head. As you elevate the shoulders, the feet are relatively lower. It's like using a step stool to reach something.
Yeah.
It's just helping them get the feeling of the pose.
Right.
And then additionally, as a teacher, you can take that strap behind the rib cage. You're positioned at their head. You're sitting down. They're in the pose. You press your feet lightly into the tops of their shoulders and then pull the strap to assist that lift of the chest.
Yeah, that sounds nice. I like to take the strap behind my back, underneath my lowest rib, so the 12th rib. And then I try to hook it. And then the arms reaching in front of me and up, it hoists the rib cage up away from the pelvis, and I can draw my belly in. And I'm really trying to just detach the ribs and the pelvis to get them to move independently. I like to do that even standing, or kneeling or sitting would be good. And I feel throughout the day, I feel like the ribs sink down towards the pelvis. And so I'm manually coming in and giving myself an adjustment of lifting the ribs back up. And that feels really nice. And you can move a little bit side to side and just get those ribs to operate separately.
Yeah, and that might be where we think of bridge as camel pose.
Yeah.
In a different relationship. So using that strap to assist thoracic extension, or to even stabilize that T12 instead of bringing it forward. You're saying up. I like the up. But you could also press back. If you tend to hinge at T12 anyway, you tend to really flare your ribs, press back into that strap. I really like the cue borrowed from Schroth therapists of Hulk out. So imagine this really old reference here, The Incredible Hulk. This man would get so enraged and all his muscles would pop out and he would burst out of his shirt. So that feeling of hulking out, widening and broadening across T12, that lowest rib cage, and then see if you can lift your chest. And I like the image of the pole vaulter who has to
go up and
over that horizontal pole. And that's the feeling here, is we're trying to lengthen up and over rather than just pressing the lowest ribs forward in space.
Yeah, you're reminding me, I was a diver in college, and one of the coaches I worked with would put a pole like above the diving board in front of it, so that when we were going into forward rotation, the goal was you had to go up over. And you start the rotation on the way up, but not go straight to rotation, which is down. And so it's that same practice of we are coming into a back bend by length, through length.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that.
It's always about that lengthening.
Yeah.
Because if we can just keep lengthening the spine, we're going to be less prone to feeling that compression.
I love this pose.
We've got arm variations.
Yeah, we haven't really talked about our arms.
You could do snow angel arms.
Yeah.
Some people like to warm up with a really easy, I call it like a lazy bridge, and the arms come overhead as the pelvis comes up.
Oh, I love doing that.
Arms come back down.
I actually do that at the end of the class, this dynamic bridge pose, where I'll have you step into the feet, lift the hips, not aggressively. At the same time, you sweep your arms up overhead, so they're reaching to the wall behind you or the baseboard behind you. And then exhale, you lower your hips and hands at the same time, so you're connecting your movement with your breath. Inhale, come on back up, lift the hips, sweep the arms overhead, exhale, come on back down. And then this is a good cue for teachers. Every time I do it, I get positive feedback. So on the last time, you step into your feet, lift your hips, sweep your arms overhead, and then I will come behind a person and have them hold on to my ankles. I will walk my ankles back away from their head just a smidge. I'm tractioning them out. I think I'm Frankenstein tractioning them out. And then they hold on to my ankles and slowly lower down one vertebra at a time. And it just pulls and creates a space in the pelvis. And if you feel that too when you're not holding on to anything either, lie the pelvis down and take a moment and then bring the hands alongside the hips, and it feels just like, it's so good. And I like to do that right before Shavasana too, because I think it's super good at down-regulating the nervous system. Which is interesting, because it's down-regulating from a back bend, and back bends are energizing. But maybe it's the slow pacing, it's the creating the space, it's the breath.
For some people, that rolling down, if you don't have osteoporosis, you don't have disc herniation issues, if it's safe for your spine to roll down one at a time, I think that it really deepens the internal focus. It slows you down. If you do need to re-engage through your abdominals after the back bend, if you need to.
You'll have to. You have to.
What do you mean?
I think you have to use the front of the body to help the back of the body connect theoretically one vertebra at a time.
Oh, yeah. It forces that if you're rolling down one vertebra. Yeah, and for a long time, because my lumbar spine was so flat, rolling down just killed my back. And if I did it after a back bend, I was even worse. And I'd hug my knees in, and then it felt even worse. Okay. And so I think, it just depends. The flatter your spine is, you're not going to hug in at all. You could do like a tip your knees and a windshield wide stance twist. But certainly it's entirely valid. The more you move towards lumbar extension, this is really important. You re-engage abdominals and restore that neutral spine. Moving the ribcage into this posterior tilt as you bring your arms overhead, it's a movement flaw. Like we're just allowing the flaw to get the satisfaction of the range of the arms being overhead. But then where the rubber meets the road is if you were to keep your arms overhead and not hyperextend your shoulders, and keep your elbows pointing towards the ceiling. Don't hyperextend your elbows either. The elbow
extend, period.
But then you'd have to cue that because people don't know. So if you're giving that adjustment with the hold the ankles, you say bend your elbows to keep your armpits wrapping in towards your face, because you want to keep that shoulder blade wide enough and not just have them lower down, hyperextending those joints. I can preserve the integrity in the arm and I can get the spine down. It feels like such a wonderful embrace of the core. Yeah. And I think it's well suited to put that at the end of the practice where hopefully those abdominals are working, the core is working, that integrity is there. Yeah. And then you feel that nice range plus the traction. It can feel really good.
So I want to bring us back to the very beginning when we were talking about getting into the pose, because we've done so much good work on placement of the feet, pelvic tilt, where to initiate the pelvic tilt from, how coming up into this through extension is going to probably feel better in your body, and that you want the collars broad, you want the heads of the shoulders broad, you want a little bit of an external rotation, you want the shoulder heads behind the ribs, and then we didn't really say default arm position. So the default arm position is just arms alongside your torso, maybe slightly away from the body.
I always press bent arms to try to get them to connect the tricep, the back of the upper arm to the upper back muscles. They're connected. So if you can press down through those upper arms.
The forearms are perpendicular to the floor.
Yep.
The
palms
upper
face
arm.
the midline. You can even spin the forearms towards your face. So now we're working on external rotation coming from the hand and assisting that external rotation all the way up. A kind of scoop that we do in side angle pose. And then you can even fan the hands open. I call the I didn't do it pose. If you were I didn't do it. When you're standing and your arms go out to the side, your palms face the ceiling. So when you're lying down, right, your palms are facing your face and you just open the hands. That's a little rotator cuff engagement. And I feel my upper arm externally rotating even more. I feel those muscles engage and it feels like it stabilizes the joint. It feels really nice.
Cool.
Another Doug Keller hack.
Yeah, his books that I have are just a mess. I use them so much. There are pages falling out. And we both are fans. Okay, so that's how the pose is unadulterated.
and then adulterate it in many ways.
Yeah.
So that it's not the consolation prize. I even like putting the feet up on blocks to get that nice feeling of stretch through the quads. A fun variation to do. I have to make sure that the head and neck are comfortable, make sure the chin lifts. People often say, oh, like I can't swallow, like my throat feels congested. So I typically try to cue to lift the chin.
To lift the chin?
To lift the chin. It's already going to be very tucked for most people in this pose. If you're hyperkyphotic, then the chin's
Right.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess I work with so many hypermobile people. Their chin is buried in their throat.
Yeah, so I'm always thinking, again, you're talking about the neutral pelvis is where you can have your hands on the as-is bone and a finger on the pubic bone. It feels like it's on one plane. And I feel my forehead and chin are on the same plane, and I'm feeling length through all sides of the neck. That's good. But when I run into people and their chin is lifted and the back of their neck is bent, that just causes pain just to look at it for me. So I'm always playing with the relationship of the forehead and the chin.
Yeah, and you can always quickly slide a blanket under someone's head, but then put your hand on the sternum, careful not to touch breast tissue if it's there, but lift into my fingers. Inhale here, squeeze your shoulder blades together. Let's fix that by certainly lengthening through the back of the neck, but it's because the thoracic spine has not extended at all, and then that person needs blankets under their upper back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you want them to feel successful, and you want them to feel like, you want this pose to feel nourishing to them.
Generally, we're not ever, are you feeling this in your neck? Great. No. For any pose, we're not feeling this in the neck. Unless you're like, oh, I'm going to do a warm-up where I'm hand on the side of the head, tip the ear towards the opposite shoulder, and you're in a mild stretch. But
okay, we'll talk about the neck later, because I got some neck push-up things I like to do. But that's a different, Sarah's looking at me with wide eyes. Like wide eyes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's a different bar fight.
It's so interesting because the neck starts in the upper back, and so let's at least get that part on board. If that's not on board, I'm not doing shit with the neck.
That's good point. Good point.
Yeah.
But I do think the neck, we don't want to treat the neck with such kid gloves that, that we don't take care of it. We need some tissue to be strong so it supports the head's position. We need there to be opening. We need the tissue neck to actually work. There's a ton of communication that goes through there.
Yeah, and I think like 1,000%, because it's such an important, very vulnerable area that people like
just shy away.
They shy away. But yes, working on neck mechanics, neck position. Another Doug Keller trick is to use the 3-finger positioning at the base of the skull, and you could even do that in bridge. And you don't want to feel those spinous processes poking out backwards in bridge. You would lift the chin if you're feeling that, and if you feel instead a hollow cave and you have to dig your fingers in to find those spinous processes, then your chin is way too high. If those muscles are hypertonic, too tight on either side of the spine and the neck, then we want to lengthen the back of the neck and create some release there. Check the texture of their neck.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially if they're a therapeutic client, especially if you're looking at that and you're like, this doesn't look right. Touch it, feel the tissue. Yeah. There's so much hidden information through touch.
Yeah, it's interesting because that's one of the benefits of yoga therapy is yoga therapists touch.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of professions where they're no longer allowed to touch. And that's missing out on a lot.
Right. Yeah. Educated touch with permission, and then inviting the student or the client to start to feel like, please touch your body and ascertain how aggravated and pissed off this area is or how tight it is. And you don't even realize it's so habituated. It's like this. It's like a hum of the refrigerator that you never even notice unless you're like, wait a second.
It's not working.
Yeah. When the power goes out, you're like, oh, kitchen's so quiet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's necessary.
Okay, so this is so fun. And I love these conversations because all of a sudden, I'm thinking about my class this evening, and they're going to get so much of this work. We're going to be doing the slide thing. We're going to be doing all that.
I love that slide.
Yeah.
You got to put the block on their pelvis and put it at the middle height. Because you put it at the lowest height, it's pretty stable. Yeah. You put it at the middle height, it's going to move a little bit more easily. And then for someone who's really kicking ass on it, put it at the tallest height.
Challenge for everyone in this pose.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Super fun.
Yeah.
And I think in framing it as let's have fun with this.
Yes.
No tears, people. Like nobody cares. On your gravestone, they're not going to be like, and she kept her block upright in the one-legged bridge. Nobody cares. It doesn't matter. But we can get playful with this and build strength.
And learn, yeah.
And it's like you're playing with your toys, and we only have a few toys in yoga, and the blocks are a great toy.